what is the demand looking like? So if you are just using the staffing norms, then your indicated demand is about 468,236. You are just using the staffing norms to look at how many health workers you actually need. But the effective demand, as in how many you are willing to fund, is just about 226,667. But of these, there's just a small percentage, which is about the 1.13, where we can't find those cadre or specialized personnel to go and occupy those funded areas. So mostly is those who are specializing in things in surgery and medicine. We have funding for it, but we have not been able to create that expertise yet. How is the funding looking like? So between 2018 and 2023, the average annual budget allocation for health sector was 823 million USD. The annual budget for public sector wage bill reduced from 862 million in 2018 to 687 million in 2019. Sometimes in USD, it will look like it has reduced, but depending on the exchange rate at the time, the nominal value could actually be higher. So the value increase in 2020 and 2021, I'm sure you understand why. During COVID, there was a lot of increment in allowances and all that. And so we saw an increase in the value when it comes to wages. But it reduced to 794. But what is interesting is that if you look at the total government health expenditure, if you look at how much we are actually using by way of salaries as compared to what is devoted to health sector, you are looking at about roughly between 60 to 65%, which is a huge amount. So it makes you start wondering, how much are we devoting to the other services, infrastructure, the things we actually need, when we are pumping so much for just wages? So how do we define the need of the population? So you need to consider the life course of Ghanaians, right from birth to adulthood to aging, and found out what is the disease burden throughout this. And then to be able to do that, you usually will use the prevalence and incidence of diseases, risk factors, and all that. And you are just looking at how many of these contributes to about 98% of the morbidities and mortalities of the health service. And when you've been able to establish that throughout these interventions, you need to be able to define what the package or health services are required at every stage. And then the professional standard for service delivery. That is, you are looking at how many times a service is required. So for instance, if it is ANC, you need to determine how many times a woman can go for ANC if the person is pregnant. You know, the National Health Insurance will pay for about six visits, for instance. So you need to factor all this in. You need to look at the tools, the medicines which will be needed for each intervention. And then what is important here is the acceptable time it will take for a reasonably trained health worker to deliver the intervention. So you realize that if the person is a novice, the person will probably take a longer time. But if the person has experts, you probably take a very short time in delivering some of the anesthesia services. So when you've been able to do that, so what you actually do is put all this information into modeling to be able to come out with what the projected numbers will be. And of course, you need to consider what your UHC index, as in what your focus actually should be. And if you do that, you realize that for the yellow one, which is a baseline supply scenario, that's as if we are just continuing with the current pace. So if you just consider the current rate of supply, then we are going to have this, the yellow one. So you realize that by 2030, we'll have about 437,000. But based on the best estimate, which is the green one, that is what I want us to focus on. If you consider that, you realize that by 2030, we should have at least 490,000 workers in Ghana. to meet our health needs, that is.